Thank you, Ken, for this illuminating and passionate introduction. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is fortunately not the end of the narrative. This is the beginning of the narrative. And we're now going to take it further by systematically looking at the different phases in Kathy's life, starting with his upbringing and his politicization, then going towards his activism in his early teens, and then the trials, then Robben Island, post-war, and end off with some general reflections about the implications of all of these things and the lessons that we have to learn from this period in our history and from his and his colleagues' experiences for ourselves in South Africa and for the future. If you don't mind, I'm going to sit down to take it leisurely and to ask, to start off by asking Kathy, first of all, to tell us something more about your upbringing in Swaziland, in the Northwest. Kathy hails from Swaziland, which is one of the deep rural areas in the Northwest, as many of you would know. Maybe some of you already also come from there. It is also currently still reputed to be a highly conservative rural area and a predominantly Afrikaans area. So, Kathy, tell us a little bit about your upbringing in Swaziland and how that influenced your views and your politicization.
Well, when time came for me to go to school, I could not be admitted into the white school. I could not be admitted into the African school. There was no Indian school because the community was too small. So at the age of 8 or 9, I had to be sent away all the way to Johannesburg to school. And that was the first time that I saw the inside of a school. So one starts asking, because as children, you don't know color. With our immediate neighbors, on the one side was the bank manager, at the back was the mayor. I won't go into details of how we came to look at that situation. But what I'm saying is that we didn't know color. Children don't know color. They play, they quarrel, they make up. So at that age, when I'm sent away to Johannesburg at the age of 8, you start questioning, why can't I go to the school of my friends? It's not politics. It's a simple question a child asks. And from there, in the area where I was staying, there was a youth club run by the Young Communist League, and young people liked films and picnics and so forth. So I was drawn into the youth club, from there to the Young Communist League, from there to the Indian Youth Congress, and it went on and on until I landed in prison.
Okay, now one of the comments that you make in that chapter about your upbringing, one of the interesting comments for me that you made in that chapter on your upbringing in Swaziland was the fact that generally, if I interpreted what you wrote correctly, generally there were very good relationships socially and in the business field, where your father was the owner of a shop there in Swaziland, and many of your clients were Afrikaner white people from the farms or from the town, and generally there was a very good relationship. But a little bit later, you had a comment that it was interesting that those people who, in your personal interactions, had maintained very good relationships with you, sometimes were found when they made political statements or when they become active in politics, they literally changed character. They became very racist in their utterances. My question to you is, how do you explain that? How do you explain that? Because I think that is a very interesting aspect and a very controversial aspect of South African society. The whole racial relationship and then also the political relationships.
It's difficult to explain that, but I think one of the problems of apartheid is people could not come to know one another. They were in separate ghettos. So the perception among people who don't live in the African townships was all blacks are criminals. That's how people grow up. Say, you talk of Lebanese and talk of Soweto next to each other. I'm just giving an example. The youngsters in Soweto will grow up thinking all Indians are rich and all Indians exploit. What they don't know that Indians also do drugs and stuff, as whites do. They don't know that. Among the Indian youth, all Africans are criminals. Those perceptions were there. Fortunately, those are dying out as young people are getting more and more educated. But that's how things were at that time. Of course, things started changing after April '94. We've still got some way to go, but in getting one united nation, we have some way to go, but we have made considerable progress in that time.
I thought you forgot about me,
No.
Professor Kathrada. Thank you. Welcome to everybody. The book is really a fascinating read. It's almost a chronological sequence of Kathy's life. So let me zero in on what you call in the book the period of activism, becoming active. And I should just share with all of you that Kathy almost bumped into the Youth League and the Young Communist League. Well, the Young Communist League at the age of 14. 12. So, you know, from a very early age, activism. So in the 1940s, so I want to build up on something here. As early as the 1940s, you meet Nelson Mandela and Walter Sisulu. And throughout the book, they play a profound role in your life. They have a tremendous and profound impact on your life. So much so that during the funeral of your comrade, the first president of a democratic South Africa, in a very, very moving speech, as I shared with you earlier, you describe Nelson Mandela and say you lost a brother, and you describe Walter Sisulu and say when he died you lost a father figure, and then you ask this really tough question: what am I to do? What's going to happen to me? Just explain to me the role of these two and other senior figures in your life. There's something about the values and principles that you stood for that is absolutely remarkable.
First of all, I met both these men in the 40s, more or less the same time. But I can remember exactly when I met Madiba. He was a law student at Wits, together with Ismail Mir and Jayant Singh, whom I knew. And they had a flat in Market Street, Ismail Mir had. So sometimes after law lectures, Madiba came with me. And that's how I met him for the first time, 67 years ago, 1946. At that time, there were so few at university. So when you see a black student, and I'm at school, you are in awe of him, you know, and you want to be like him one day. But what the abiding thing about Madiba is the way he related to me. as a youngster. He's a university student. But he made me feel equal. His conversations with me made me so comfortable. So much so that I could go back and boast to my fellow students. I met this university student who treated me as an equal. Well, that was the beginning of my contact with him. With Walter, I met him more or less at the same time. Now, my father died when I was 40, 1943. But even then, when he was alive, he was out in the country all alone. And I met Walter. I can't remember how, but I met him. If anybody knew Walter, he was naturally a father figure to everybody. And in prison, right across the political spectrum, Walter was their father. But to me, it was very special. I won't go into details. My relationship with Walter and Master Zulu became so close that one of their, to give you a little bit of explanation, somebody who was released from Robben Island, and he went to greet the Zulus, and of course, Master Zulu took him to stay with him. He then changed his name to Sasulu. His daughter was born. What does he name her? Officially, Kathrada Sasulu. I wrote back, I said, now how can you allow this child to grow up with that? But fortunately, my nickname is Ken. But unfortunately, that child died last year. So what I'm saying, my relationship with Walter, now I could go to him with the most personal things. And I'll bring on, expose my own personal things. I got into a relationship with a white woman, before and after. After it wasn't illegal. Before that it was illegal. And I often think, if I had got caught with her, I would have got 6 months. But I waited and I got life. Anyway, so when I started that relationship, I went to work. There's nobody else I could consult. I said, look, I've got this relationship. If I get caught, it's going to impact negatively on the organization. What do I do? He said, look, the Immorality Act, the Mixed Managers Act are racial acts. And we are fighting all of my thoughts. Just be careful what you are doing, and if you get arrested, we'll be with you. So that was the father figure. And that's the type of thing I could confide in him. So many other things. Of course, prison made it much more. It cements relationships like nothing else. The last 7 years I stayed with Walter, just the two of us in one cell. And there I could see the man he was. It just increased my love for him. Just the two of us in one cell, and Andrew and Raymond in the other. And Madiba was taken away from us. And then my love for him grew. And my admiration for him as an expert in the history of the liberation movements. But I could go on and on about him.
Kath, we have to bring the audience in pretty soon. Let me just ask you one final question before we open up for the participants to join us in conversation. Given the setting where we're sitting today, at a university, we're having this discussion at a university. All of you on Robben Island, immediately after the Rivonia trial, and literally for those long, what some would consider dark decades, you placed a very high premium on education. And there are two things that stands out from the memoirs, is all of you studying and educating yourselves, even formally acquiring qualifications. But fascinatingly, you almost on the island started a political school. Of course, you couldn't call it an ANC school, certainly not a Communist Party school, because your sentences could have been extended. It's clear from the book. But talk to us just about the centrality of education then, and relay a message to some of our young students today about the importance of education.
Then again, our leadership was so insistent that people should study. But unfortunately, there were obstructions. There was a rule that if you want to register with an institution, a school or a university, you had to have money. And that money must come from your own family. If the lawyers send you money, if the churches send you money, the Red Cross send you money, they send it back. So that meant that the vast majority of prisoners could not formally study. We had we were separated from the rest of the prison committee, about 25 of us, completely separated. So much so that President Zuma, Deputy President Motlanthe, they were there for 10 years. We never saw them. They never saw us. But coming back to studies, this meant that you had to now concentrate on informal studies. So fortunately and unfortunately for them, there were so many teachers among us, former teachers, and others who were educated. So they took it, there was in our little section, the late Professor Neville Alexander established what they called RITA, Robben Island Teachers Association. And among us, there were 3 gentlemen from the Transvaal, completely illiterate, completely. So there, Neville would take Governor begging. Governor was a teacher, that you must see to it that these guys get lessons, and others. So what I'm saying is that happened right through, not only in our section, but all. Because even among the communal cells, where there were hundreds of prisoners, there were quite a number of illiterate or semi-literate people. May I just give 2 examples? A young man comes to prison at the age of 15, sentenced to 10 years. Fortunately, his parents could send him money. In the 10 years, he did his JC, his matric, his BA, started his BUS, completed it outside, completed law outside, and today he is the Deputy Judge President of the highest court in the country, the Constitution Court. Most of you know his name, Kikas Mosenek. Now that's the product of Robben Island. Now fortunately he could study. There came another young man with a standard 2 education, no money. He left Robben Island after 10 years without a certificate because he couldn't study properly. He got all his education from fellow prisoners. He left prison without a certificate, but an educated man. President Zuma. So you find many like that, educated on Robben Island. As you said, we placed a lot of emphasis on education, and we succeeded there. Nobody left Robben Island illiterate.